So, EpiPen, the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, confirmed that Mylan, the EpiPen drug maker, had serially overcharged the government for its product. You will remember the CEO, Heather Bresch, testified before Congress last month, September. And in that testimony, they were discussing the price hike for this life-saving drug. And they raised the price, I believe, by 500%. And she, between 2007, when they acquired EpiPen, and 2016, transformed it from being a $200 million company to being a $1.1 billion company. Just that drug, right? Not their overall company, but just the EpiPen brand. People have subsequently stopped acquiring the drug, especially those people who may not have had coverage because of how exorbitant the prices became. It's interesting to note that during that same period that they increased the price 500%, and they turned their company that EpiPen sells from $200 million in business to $1.1 billion of business. Bresch's salary increased by 600%. Just thought that was worth mentioning. All right, so that's the little backstory on Bresch, Mylan, and the EpiPen. But as of today, the CMS has confirmed that EpiPen or Mylan has been overcharging the government, fleecing the government for its product. So Senator Ron Wyden, Democrat of Oregon, said, quote, "Today's letter is more evidence that while Mylan irresponsibly raised the price of EpiPen, they were also bilking taxpayers out of millions of dollars. Quote, essential medicines like EpiPen are increasingly out of the reach for families across the nation due to unjustified price hikes, and it's high time for drug companies to take responsibility for their actions. We will ensure taxpayers get their due." All right, so from 2011 to 2015, the government spending on EpiPen, just on EpiPen, right, increased 463%, from $86 million to $487 million. Now, the way they overcharged them is that they labeled the product as generic so that states would pay higher prices for the drugs. So instead of labeling it in a way that would save states money, they labeled it in a manner that costs states more money for the same exact drug. You'll remember the exchange that and let me bring up her picture, that Bresch had with Congressman Jason Chaffetz, depending on how you pronounce it, where they were going back and forth between, is there any difference between the generic and the actual drug? And she said, no, it's the same exact product. So giving the federal government the same exact product and charging them at a rate that's going to charging them, or labeling it in a fashion that costs states more than it would have if they had labeled it properly. EpiPen was able to increase their revenues from the government from $86 million to $487 million. This is, as my friend Brandon last night would say, this is a great example of the excesses of the problem, right? It doesn't really speak to the problem. They're really upset with the outliers, or the excesses, or the overpricing, or the fleecing of the taxpayer, or situations where people who had the drug, a life-saving drug, can no longer get it because profits were so important. But it won't speak to the underlying problem of these two things. One, these companies will always, seek the highest profit margin they possibly can get through any means they possibly can. Mostly legal, if they can afford to make it legal, and then sometimes maybe not so legal. Companies have they're driven to do this. That's number one. Two, there's really not much the government can do unless it passes some type of regulation, unless they fundamentally change the structure of the paradigm. But all of the congressional hearings, while they may seem dramatic, they're really a dog and pony show to let the person watching it at home feel like something is being done when ultimately nothing is being done. So all Nowlin had to do was the same thing that the Pharma bro, I can't think of his name right now. All they had to do was survive this congressional hearing and survive the public relations disaster. And so long as they survive that, they can continue charging whatever the hell they want to charge. And so long as we don't address the structural problems, which is these companies have a vested interest that is antithetical to the interests of the people who need these life-saving drugs. In other words, companies want to charge as much as they can, and families can only afford to pay whatever they can afford to pay, but they desperately need these drugs. And unless we address that underlying problem, it will always just be a dog and pony show. It would always just be kind of a entertainment, because that's what it was. That's what that congressional hearing was. It was entertainment. And I've yet to see anything like even with going back, speaking of congressional hearings, going back to the Wells Fargo hearing with the CEO of Wells Fargo and Senator Elizabeth Warren. It was a great theater, but what was done about it? What changes were made? Absolutely none.